I pushed open the boardroom door and carried in a silence no one expected. 24 executives swiveled their chairs at once. At the center of the table, Melissa Parker, 23-year-old intern, flawless manicure, bright future, froze when she saw me holding 2 luxury suitcases. Crashing the middle of a quarterly budget review wasn't part of my plan, but once I learned my husband's Thursday afternoon meetings were happening 2 blocks away at the Marriott, I realized timing loves irony. I took a deep breath. Delivery for Melissa Parker. The tags on the suitcases said it all. Personal contents. Melissa went pale. I couldn't forget the angelic smile she wore at the holiday party while, under the table, she was texting him. Now those same hands shook as they gripped the mahogany edge. My husband, nowhere in sight. Regional directors always have client visits at times like this. I'd heard today's visit was also billed to the corporate card. The difference is, this time I brought the receipt in the form of luggage. As I set the bags beside her chair, the room stayed silent until a murmur ran down the table, quick as a spark in gunpowder. I turned for the door without another word. Behind me, I heard zippers opening, papers sliding, reputations crashing, and I thought, some stories don't need a farewell speech. Italian leather proof speaks for itself. The air on the 27th floor was heavy when I pushed open the meeting room doors. Everyone went quiet. Only the projector's hum filled the void. "Sorry, and you are?" the CEO asked, pen frozen mid-air. "Evelyn Reynolds," I said, my voice echoing off the glass. "Still Daniel's wife, for now." I dragged 2 suitcases to the center of the room. Their wheels scratched the marble, yanking every gaze. If Melissa's been using my husband, she might as well use the rest of the kit. A ripple ran across the polished table. I acted like I didn't hear it. My eyes stayed glued to her. First confusion, then understanding. Finally, the fear of someone whose perfect plan just blew up in public, in front of the entire board. 3 weeks ago, I would have crumbled. That version of me died the moment I read the message that popped up on the iPad while Daniel was showering. "Can't wait to taste you again tomorrow." Everything changed right there. Today, this room is my stage. Every shocked face is my audience. And Melissa just learned the bill sometimes arrives before the coffee. This isn't how our life was supposed to unravel. Beachfront condo, country club card, the sure plan to order up the first baby right after his promotion. 15 years of dating became 5 of marriage and 3 of fertility shots stabbing me while he worked late. Only later did the cheating bill snap shut. The HR director, impeccable but pale, half rose. "Mrs. Reynolds, there must be some mistake." I raised a hand before she could finish. "No mistake. Evidence. I tapped my purse. Inside, everything cataloged. Screenshots, hotel bills, the GPS trail he thought he erased. I came to drop off what's Melissa's. I spun the first suitcase onto the table. On top lay the gray cashmere sweater I gave him last Christmas. I tossed it to the director. It arced perfectly. She caught it on reflex, cheeks flushing. "He likes it when you run your hand over his back with that fabric. Feather-light touches, no nails. He's afraid scratches will show at the gym." A stifled laugh echoed in the corner. Maybe the CFO, maybe just the ghost of dignity left in that glass hall. For a heartbeat, everyone heard their own pulse. Then I opened the second suitcase. No clothes this time, only numbered sheets, neat clips, dates forming a mosaic no one could deny. Each page thudded onto the table like a stamp. Lie, lie, lie. 15 years. I repeated as the pile grew. I always thought fidelity was addition. Turned out, for him, it was subtraction. Before anyone could muster sympathy, I slid the last folder to the center. The divorce papers, already signed. "Now the rest of this tab is on you?" I turned unhurriedly. Behind me, the silence weighed more than any figure. At the door, I let it creak a second longer, so everyone would understand that from now on they'd hear their own equations explode in their heads. "I'm not done." My hand went back to the suitcase and came out with his shaving kit, initials etched in metal. I set it on the table. It slid until it stopped in front of her. "He needs that Swiss cream every night or he turns into a bear." I paused for a beat, almost amused. "Oh, and keep him away from seafood. His skin breaks out in blotches. I'm guessing you've already noticed during those mentorship dinners while I was at the hospital with my mom. The air goes cold. Melissa swallows hard, looking for a door, an ally, a miracle. She finds none. Evelyn, her voice cracks. First name basis, how cozy. I tilt my head like I'm inspecting a botched project. Funny. He said he was mentoring you because you had so much potential. I believed him. I was even proud of how he supported women. I opened the second suitcase. Here are his meds. His blood pressure is always sky high, easy on the excitement. And the watches. The Rolex was my wedding anniversary gift to him. Sentimental value doesn't seem to matter to him. It doesn't matter to me anymore either. I zip it up calmly, straighten the blazer I wear to my firm's meetings, armor that never slips, even when the world splits open. Oh, almost forgot. I sent compliance the receipts from your dates. Hotel, gifts, dinners, all on the company card. I think legal is going to love the read. Silence. The Rolex's tick-tock marks the end of one story and the start of another. Melissa could barely finish the sentence. Her mascara was already sliding down in dark streaks, tracing every tremor that rattled her. I let her cry. It was the least I could do after learning that the man I'd built my life around was secretly building another story, with her. This is a workplace, she stammered, trying to steady her voice. My marriage was supposed to be one too, I answered, my tone unchanged. But Daniel chose to invest his heart elsewhere. Now he can enjoy the return. I spun on my heels. The weight of what I'd just done hit like a punch, almost folding me. But in 15 years of marriage, I'd learned one rule: never crack in public. I straightened up, squared my shoulders, and walked through the lobby as a thick silence settled. The glass door snapped shut behind me, the only explanation I gave the makeshift audience. Only in the parking lot did I let the shield drop. Inside the car, I rested my forehead on the steering wheel. The sobs I'd held back all morning burst out, one after another, hard enough to shake the seat. Every breath felt like it was taking me apart, but there was relief too. His double life wasn't coming along for the ride. In the rearview mirror, I saw the black smudges on my own face and caught myself laughing, halfway between tears and the simple realization that the worst was over. I already knew the truth. What would come next? I had no idea, and that uncertainty, oddly enough, felt like the first open space I'd had in years. It wasn't supposed to go like this. I met Daniel in our senior year of law school. He'd stay up past midnight in the study hall, translating tough articles for people cramming for the bar. Those nights he convinced me I had a place in that future. Months later, on a ferry to Bainbridge Island, Daniel dropped to one knee. Behind him, Seattle's lights tore across the sky. "You're the only sure thing in my life," he said before sliding the ring onto my finger. I believed him. We started sketching our life like we were building a cathedral, step by step, side by side. We picked jobs, signed for the condo, set a date to try for our first kid. Every decision was made by two voices, or so I thought. Our first round of IVF failed. Daniel hugged me. "We've got time." Second try, another no. The third hit us again. I fought with the mirror. He kept saying we were in it together. Now I know. His together didn't include me. The loose thread showed up when Melissa, then a marketing intern, joined the company. That's when the other story started being written, while ours, without me noticing, turned into a rough draft. And that's how I learned endings can change halfway through, even when you swear you're the one holding the pen. I always thought I'd notice when my world started to crumble, until it all happened right in front of me and I didn't see it. I met that rookie analyst at a company picnic last summer. She seemed calm, eager, the kind of talent any team would want. I suggested Daniel help her get her bearings, the way others had helped him. Little did I know that Link would later turn into a crack. Then came the signs, meetings that ran past midnight, weekend emergencies, a sudden gym routine at odd hours, the pricey cologne I never bought, the phone glued to his hand, locked even at the dinner table. It was all right there, but I had other battles. At the office, the caseload piled up. At home, the IVF hormones messed with my body and my head. After midnight, I took shifts with the nurses caring for my mom in her last months of cancer. Even so, I kept the social calendar spinning like nothing could break. I didn't have the breath left to suspect betrayal. Maybe I just didn't want to see. 2 weeks ago, my mom finally found rest. The hush after the constant oxygen filled the house with a strange emptiness. Daniel was helpful, at least on the surface. He showed up for family dinners, asked about her, then quickly steered the talk back to work. It was in that quiet that I started to hear everything I'd ignored. And now here I am, in the car, hands on the wheel, the whole story flashing before my eyes. The bitter laugh that slips out reminds me that even when we think we're in control, life finds a way to surprise us. The question that lingers is, what do I do with this truth? And where do I go from here? The night I buried my mom, all I wanted was a hug. Instead, he rushed out, saying a client was waiting. I was left alone with the silent house, the smell of funeral flowers still clinging to my clothes. While I waited for him to come back, I opened his phone, a move with no clear reason, just the impulse of someone looking for comfort in anything familiar. The notifications wouldn't stop. I opened the chats. I scrolled. Months and months. Every line twisted my stomach tighter. Whispered promises, shared laughs, complaints about me. There it all was. Him saying I'd become distant, that I was obsessed with getting pregnant, that the marriage was already over. Words traded while I was injecting hormones every night, dealing with bruises and mood swings, betting our whole future on 2 tiny cells. Words traded while I held my mom's hand, feeling the cancer take what little was left of her. While I paid bills, kept our social calendar intact, took all the responsibility on myself. Each message was the exact record of a lie told to my face. Every I love you fell apart right there, in pixels. "You're the only woman who really gets me," he wrote to her. "When can I have you all to myself?" she wanted to know. He answered in 2 syllables that still echo. "Soon." I promised myself I'd wait for the perfect moment, but when you're about to blow up someone's world, is there really a scheduled time? That night he came in late, wrapped in a perfume that wasn't mine and generic hotel soap. I was already waiting in the dark living room, the cold light of the iPad spilling the dialogue he was having with her across the screen. When he saw me, he showed no shock or remorse, just irritation at being caught. "It's not what you think." The automatic line slipped out, the cheater's classic. "Are you sure?" I replied, voice steady. "Because it looks like you're sleeping with the intern while I take care of my dying mom and fight to get pregnant with your child. Explain how that's not exactly what it seems." He switched tactics in a blink. "You checked out of this marriage years ago, Alex. What was I supposed to do?" That's when I knew it was over. Not just because of the betrayal, but because he tried to pin the blame on me, as if my grief, my desire for a baby, and my career ambitions had shoved him into another bed. "Leave," I ordered, low enough to leave no room for argument. "This is my house, too," he shot back. "The mortgage, my law degree pays. The place is in my name because your credit was a disaster. Remember?" He expected me to back off. I just stared at the door, pointing the way. And in that loaded silence, I started rehearsing the next act. He spent the first and second nights in the guest room. The house, once lively, turned into a space of tense silence, 2 strangers moving through the same rooms that not long ago held laughter and plans. On the morning of the 3rd day, he broke the ice. "We need to talk calmly," he said, stirring his coffee. "People make mistakes. Lots of marriages get past this." Across the counter, I looked at the man I'd spent 15 years with, someone who, even after cheating, talked like forgiveness was automatic. "I agree," I answered, firm. "Let's talk." He relaxed, thinking he'd gained ground. "I've already called a lawyer. You'll get the papers soon. Until then, I need you out of the house tomorrow." His face fell in surprise. "You can't be serious. Where am I supposed to live?" "I don't know, Daniel. Maybe Melissa has room. Or any of the other women you've been with." The mention of the others hit hard. He tried to appeal. "Alex, be reasonable." "I am. I'll even help with your bags." When he went back to the guest room, I sat on our bed and mapped out the next step. Corporate law teaches you to plan even amid ruins. I started with the basics, protected my money. I took only my share from the joint accounts and moved it into mine. Nothing more than fair. I changed every password, from the bank to streaming services. I called the credit card companies and removed his name. Tomorrow, when daylight breaks, he'll notice the drawers feel lighter. And so do I. Janet needed just 2 days to hand me a report that spoke for itself. Hotel bills charged to the company card, pricey dinners logged as fake meetings, the company car following the exact route to her apartment, and finally, a last-minute registration for a conference in Chicago, courtesy of the firm's budget, with zero business reason for Melissa to be there. That was enough to take down any executive, especially one who'd written the company's own anti-fraternization rules, but I wanted something that left no room for excuses. While Daniel was working, I combed through the home office with surgical calm. In the third drawer of the desk, I found a velvet box. Inside, a pair of diamond earrings. Underneath, the receipt. $3,800, dated 2 weeks earlier. My birthday was still coming up, our anniversary had already passed, and my mom was in the hospital fighting for her life during that very stretch. I closed the box, took a deep breath, and realized the next step wasn't about finding more. It was about deciding what to do with everything I already had. First came the screenshots. Quick proof, but flimsy. I needed something that wouldn't crumble in front of a good lawyer. That's when I called Janet, an investigator who'd quit the precinct to chase cheaters. Over breakfast, I got straight to the point. "I don't just want to show he's cheating," I said. "I want to show he's footing the bill with company money." Janet grinned like she'd just watched an old enemy walk into the bar. 2 days later, she came back with a thick dossier. Inside were hotel bills charged to the company card, luxury dinners logged as client meetings with no client in sight, mileage on the company car matching the meetups, and the crown jewel, a Chicago conference paid for by the firm where Melissa showed up at the last minute with zero business reason. That broke every line of the ethics code Daniel, ironically, had helped write. But I still lacked the one piece that would make it airtight. While he was working, I went through the home office again. In the desk drawer, I found a little velvet box. Inside, diamond earrings. Price on the folded receipt, $3,800, bought 15 days earlier. My birthday was a ways off. Our anniversary had come and gone with no gift. The diamonds weren't for me. They were bought while my mom was fighting for her life. With Janet's dossier and that little box, I had what I needed to bring Daniel down in corporate court and to expose, once and for all, the affair that started in his heart and spread straight into finance. I put the earrings back in the jewelry box and shut the lid. They would never sparkle on Melissa's ears. That I knew. As I slid the drawer closed, something metallic flashed. A forgotten flash drive. I plugged it into the laptop. Up popped projection spreadsheets, HR reports, confidential contracts. Stuff Daniel should never have taken home, especially from a department locked down by strict rules. I copied everything. If the storm hit, I already had my life jacket. 3 days were enough to gather the ammo to blow up both marriage and career. But I wasn't in a hurry to shred his badge. First, I wanted him and his girlfriend to feel the weight of exposure. The idea was simple: turn them into hallway gossip, the kind that follows you even after the elevator doors close. I chose the perfect stage. On Thursday, the quarterly budget meeting would pack the boardroom. Daniel would be at the Marriott, his standing client appointment, always with Melissa in tow. Only this time she'd been called in to present the marketing numbers. Who made that happen? A phone call from me, pretending to be his assistant, straight to the CEO's secretary. With the audience set, all that was missing were the suitcases. They'd arrive right on time, dropped at reception with a note that left no doubt about the contents or the addressee, and when Melissa walked into the room, everyone would have already seen those earrings, but they still had no idea what was on the flash drive. I, however, knew that was just the opening scene. The real premiere would start once the doors closed and the projector lit up. Some truths, once hit with enough light, can't crawl back into the dark. On the eve of go time, I sent word to Daniel's assistant. Melissa had prepped the key numbers and had to present them. The secretary thought it was odd. I figured he'd present himself too, but I explained with the certainty of someone who doubts nothing that he had a scheduling conflict. It worked. Melissa was summoned immediately, leaving Daniel alone at the hotel. Just picturing it, the clock ticking, calls going unanswered, panic rising, gave me a quiet taste of revenge. The next morning I got up with a brand new serenity. I put on my best suit, flawless makeup, every hair in place. If I was about to create an unforgettable moment, I needed to look like the very definition of control. Then I packed his luggage with a watchmaker's precision: collectible watches, the autographed baseball, tailor-made suits, the rare whiskey. No rush, no loose ends. Every fold a reminder that this wasn't impulse. It was a plan. I practiced my speech in front of the mirror. No tears, no yelling. The cheated wife cliché wouldn't work for me. I wanted surgical coldness, the kind of calm that leaves deeper scars than any outburst of rage. On the way to the company, I ran through every scenario. Security stopping me, Melissa being out, Daniel popping up unannounced. But deep down, I trusted the script. People like Daniel and Melissa live convinced the world revolves around them. Today, they'll learn who really calls the shots. Some folks gamble on the idea the world tolerates everything, that no one will have the guts to settle scores. For years, I was part of that silent pact, until today. It was 2:45 p.m. when I pulled into the visitor's spot. The budget meeting was already in full swing behind the glass walls. I fixed my lipstick in the rearview mirror, took a deep breath, and hauled the 2 suitcases out of the trunk. At reception, the guard recognized me from past company events. "Mrs. Reynolds, long time no see. Is Daniel expecting you?" I smiled, calm. "Not exactly. I'm dropping off some things he needs for tomorrow's trip." He didn't even think to ask for details. Doors wide open. In the elevator, an employee offered to carry the bags. I politely declined. "I need to handle this myself." The physical weight was light. The other weight, the one I'd been shouldering for weeks, wouldn't fit in anyone else's hands. The executive floor had that air-conditioned hush only HVAC can keep. Muffled voices from the meeting room slid down the hallway like distant static. I rolled the suitcases over the carpet and stopped at the glass door. Inside, the full cast. The CEO at the head, VPs on both sides, and almost in the middle, Melissa. She was running the show, pointing at numbers on the projector, her big moment. I squared my shoulders, pushed the door open, and walked in. The second the bags touched the floor, time stretched like a rubber band about to snap. On Melissa's face flashed confusion, recognition, horror, then panic, all before my heart beat again. What happened next was better than anything I could have scripted. The room buzzed when I nudged the door shut with my hip and set a cardboard box on the conference table. "Let's start with the watch," I said, holding up a worn-out Omega. Wedding gift from Daniel. Being on time was never his strong suit. In the front row, the directors looked at each other, unsure, awkward or exciting. Didn't matter. One by one, I pulled out the items: engraved pen, battered wallet, bottle of eye drops, each with a quick, almost clinical explanation. With every piece, the initial tension morphed into pure curiosity. When the blood pressure pills came out, a stifled laugh slipped from the corner of the room. That's when Melissa, across the table, dropped her gaze and started typing under the glass top. I already knew who she was texting. "The phone seems more interesting than the meeting, Melissa," I said, pausing the inventory. "Daniel asking where you disappeared to? Tell him. Better yet, tell all of us." She looked up, color flooding her cheeks. "This is completely, totally unprofessional," she stammered. I leaned over the box, hands on its edge. "Unprofessional? Sleeping with your married boss? Charging motels and bouquets to the company card? Let's call things what they are." A murmur ran down the oak table. The CEO, Richard Hartman, straightened up but was still fishing for words. No rush. The heavy silence worked for me, setting the stage for the next blow, the real reason I was here. Unhurried, I lifted the sealed envelope at the bottom of the box. Inside are expense reports, email threads, and photos. HR and the board already have copies, but I figured you all deserved the full story, straight from the source. I paused, letting the weight of the documents sink in. No one breathed deeply. No one tapped a laptop key. It was my room now. So, before Daniel gets here to patch up his reputation, feel free to ask whatever you want. I've got time. He doesn't. I held Melissa's gaze for one last moment. Her phone buzzed again, way too loud in that silence. Richard had barely sat down when I set the folder on the table. When the hotel bill hit the company card, it stopped being personal, I warned him. He opened the first binder clip. Page 3, every expense outside policy. I slid my finger a few pages ahead. Page 7, screenshots where Daniel promises Melissa a promotion if the affair keeps going. HR's manual calls that quid pro quo sexual harassment. Richard flipped through each piece of evidence. Janet, the HR director, watched in silence, her face tightening with every item. He looked up at Melissa. Ms. Parker, is that true? His voice was tight. Melissa opened her mouth, but no words came out. I'll take that as a yes, Richard said, turning to Janet. We need to act now. Already on it, she said, standing. Ms. Parker, please. Melissa stayed seated, clutching the sweater Daniel had lent her. But he said you two were separated, she murmured, looking at me for help. The air felt thin. Everyone waited for my answer. I leaned forward and smiled, unhurried. Separated? I repeated. While I was in fertility treatment? While I was taking care of my sick mom? Funny timing for a breakup. Silence again. Only now did no one doubt whose side the truth was on. Melissa's expression shattered the moment she heard my words. He told me you two were over, that you only cared about work, that you didn't love him the way I do. And you believed him, I replied in a calm tone that almost sounded compassionate. Just like you believed him when he promised he'd leave everything to be with you. A tear streaked her perfect mascara. For a second, I almost felt sorry. Almost. Let me save you some time, Melissa. I'm his third wife. The two before me also thought they were the one until they found the affairs. It's not romance, it's routine. The silence hung between us until my phone buzzed. Daniel, of course. I showed the screen, hit speaker. Alex, where's Melissa? She's late. The whole conference room held its breath. Execs leaned in, curious. Hi, Daniel. Melissa's right here with me and your whole team. We're discussing corporate ethics. Timely topic, don't you think? A cutting silence on the other end. What did you do? He growled. Just returned your gifts to your girlfriend in front of everybody and shared that deck you put together, the one showing how company money funds your midlife crisis. Eyes around the table ranged from shock to delight. I just smiled, waiting for Daniel's next question. The next chapter would start in seconds, and everyone was hooked. You've crossed every line. Daniel leaned back in his chair, trying to keep an authoritative pose. You had no right to dig into my business. I took a deep breath before answering. Actually, I do. I'm a corporate lawyer focused on ethics. That's my job. I'm your wife. That's my duty. I'm a human being. That's my right. He narrowed his eyes, clinging to the last card he thought he had. You'll pay for this in the divorce. I smiled calmly. Interesting. Who was it that put a prenup protecting his own assets? Who has proof of your cheating and the company funds you siphoned? Who still has a job? I let the question hang. Daniel didn't answer. His phone vibrated on the table. He picked up. Richard? The partner's voice boomed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Daniel, I need you in my office. Now call ended. Silence. 24 pairs of eyes swung to me, half shocked, half satisfied. At the end of the table, Melissa slumped in her chair. Janet was already waiting to walk her to HR. I stacked the reports, closed the folder, and lifted my head. Presentation over. Thanks for your attention. Sorry for the interruption. I started to leave. Richard called me by my last name. Mrs. Reynolds. I turned slightly. This company owes you an apology. We'll handle what happened with complete seriousness. I nodded, straightened my blazer, and walked through the door. The hallway ahead was clear, and the path finally mine alone. I nodded, but I didn't agree. Reevaluate that so-called code of ethics. It's leaking through the cracks. I turned and left Daniel's suitcases where they were. I wasn't carrying his baggage anymore, not the physical kind, not the emotional kind. In the elevator, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my lawyer. "All done," I typed. "Exactly like we planned." "Perfect," she replied. "That makes the rest of the negotiation easier." The rush of adrenaline faded when I reached the car. My hands shook as I turned the key. Even so, I started the engine. I'd done what I had to do. In the rear-view mirror, I saw a familiar face, but the feeling was new. Light, clear, like I'd shed an old skin. Another message. Unknown number. "How could you expose me like that? You ruined everything." I deleted it without thinking. Not worth my time or my battery. Instead of going home, I drove to the seaside park where Daniel had knelt years ago. I sat on the same bench and watched the waves. They advanced, retreated, and came back stronger, persistent, stubborn. I took a deep breath and let the sound of the water set the pace for what came next. The tide doesn't ask permission to change. Neither do I. Imagine waking up and realizing the light streaming through the window no longer says day's end, but daybreak. That's how I knew everything had changed. A year earlier, I'd shoved a single suitcase into a boardroom and, with that simple gesture, turned my life upside down. The domino effect was quick. Daniel lost his job for ethical issues that very day. Melissa, who'd covered for him, was reassigned and 3 months later, quietly let go. The divorce moved fast. His lawyer preferred to sign than see everything exposed in court. I sold the beachfront condo where every room held a ghost and bought the house I'd always loved, but he called not glamorous enough. There, I planted a garden and adopted a rescue dog. Each new root in the soil, each bark in the yard, gave back a piece of me that had once fit only inside Daniel's ego. My mother's absence still weighs on me, but I talk to her while pruning the rose bushes. I tell her she saw what I didn't, the phone buzzes during dinner, the way he dismissed my ideas. She never had to say, "I told you so." Her look said it all. And work? It took off. The way I handled my own chaos became my calling card. Today, I sit in this east-facing kitchen with a steaming mug and realize the light changed, the view changed, but most of all, I changed. My phone vibrated on the table. A reminder for lunch with Janet, the investigator who became my confidant. While shutting down the laptop, I remembered an executive's comment last week. "You're the lawyer who practices what she preaches." That line opened the door for me into corporate ethics consulting and harassment prevention. I found a purpose there, to build workplaces where people like Daniel never get to act with impunity. Purpose, though, isn't everything. Another project was underway, far more personal. I'd started the adoption process. Thinking about motherhood, this time without the terms of my old marriage, felt liberating. The idea of welcoming a child carried no shadow of the contractual love that marked my life with Daniel. I stopped by the door to grab my coat and saw the frame I had made right after the divorce. The engraved phrase faces me every day. Sometimes the heaviest weight is the stories we never tell. Speaking out loud without apologizing was my cure and my manifesto. By making the betrayal and abuse public, I dropped more than a secret on the ground. I left there society's expectation of a dignified, silent wife, the unspoken duty to shield the abuser from consequences. Today, every talk I give and every policy I help draft reminds me of the same lesson. When a hidden story meets the light, it stops being a burden and becomes a tool for change. That's what I'll take to lunch with Janet, and to every company that knocks on my door. I'd almost reached the car when the past flashed on my phone screen. Just saw Daniel at Capitol Grill with a girl who looks about 25. I recognized the number, a curious former neighbor. For a second, I felt no jealousy or longing, just pity for the new companion who didn't yet know who she was dealing with. I answered quickly, Hope she returns his suitcase in an even more crowded place than I did. I deleted the thread, slipped the phone into my pocket, and went to meet Janet. As the waiter brought our plates, I confided a thought. Daniel's soap opera no longer carried my name in the credits. I'd turned the page, this time as author and lead. Janet raised her glass. Let's toast to two women who refuse to be footnotes. I tapped the crystal. And to suitcases dropped at the right destination. We laughed. In that moment, I felt the final pieces click into place. The old shame had turned into something else, something lighter. Freedom. The kind that's born when you stay true to yourself. The rest can deal with the consequences. Later, back home, I walked through the garden and spotted a dahlia that had decided to bloom out of season. I smiled, remembering the day in the boardroom when I chose to ditch the script written by others. The same courage that took me out of there now let me enjoy the late-blooming flower without hurry. And if Daniel showed up again in some message? Let him. The main storyline isn't his anymore. I seemed calm, but inside I shook, not knowing what would come next. If I could approach that scared version of myself today, I'd whisper, "Breathe. This isn't the end of your story. It's the first line of a much better chapter." I didn't know it then, but those words proved true. Fear didn't finish me. It cleared the way for everything that came after. And in that aftermath, I discovered who I really am.